Just a quick reminder that if you want to support Concepts and Legends, please remember to like and subscribe. And you can also show your support by using our TCG affiliate link for any and all of your magic needs by using the link you see here or below in the description. Any and all help is greatly appreciated and helps us bring you more videos like the one that is starting right now. Boom! It's one of my favorite words. It can be a noun, a verb, and coincidentally, is the name of the studio that is producing a new series of Magic the Gathering comics. Spoiler alert, the comics are awesome. I bought them, and I will be reviewing them in upcoming videos. But until then, I figured I would get to the root of why these comics are so deliciously addictive, and why one of those roots is writer Jed Mackay, who not only has written the entire series thus far, but is also responsible for the insane amount of work he does for Marvel Studios. I'm sure you've heard of them. I'm sure you've also heard enough of me. I know I have, so let's switch it up and hear from Jed himself. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today.
Oh, no, happy to do it. Yeah, like I said, sorry I was late there.
Oh no, I wouldn't. It's no big deal. Things happen. You're a busy writer, and we'll start things off. Did you study writing as a student when you were in school? Did you have a formal training in that?
No, not really. I mean, I think I was in a writing class in high school. I was rejected from the creative writing program at the university I went to. Uh,
What?
I mean, it's fine. I came across my old portfolio that I sent them back in like 2001, 2002, and they had good cause. It wasn't very good,
I
but
see.
no, it's my writing is basically just over the years the amount of reading I've done, and then you absorb, you internalize things, and eventually take all those bits and pieces and churn them out into something new.
Right, right. Like Star Wars, like George Lucas and Star Wars, the sort of the mythology, the Joseph Campbell aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. Like the thing with writing is you're always recombining your influences.
Yeah.
Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. I'll come across stuff that I read when I was younger, and I'll be surprised when I recognize how influential that was. But I wouldn't come to mind, or I wouldn't have thought of it if someone had asked me.
Yeah, that's true. So what comics do you think influenced you the most growing up? Is there a particular one that was the most influential, or?
Growing up, the comics that I came up reading comics, so I started reading Tintin, the Barks and Don Rosa, Donald Duck, Uncle Scrooge stuff, and then just kind of moved on through there. I through the '90s, I wasn't reading '90s comics because we were not going to buy new comics because we have comics at home. I had all my dad's old comics from the '70s, so I've got
Okay, all right.
great big Rubbermaids of '70s stuff, just from kind of the whole range. Mostly Marvel, some DC, but yeah, just kind of stuff from all over the place. So I came up reading. Conan was a big one. Barry Windsor Smith stuff. Master of Kung Fu, Herb Trimpe's Hulk, um, and then from there on to the other kind of wider, weirder stuff.
So like essentially, you probably your influences probably felt more like somebody who grew up in the '70s versus when you grew up, right?
Oh yeah, easily. Because it's kind of funny. Like a lot of the comic creators of my generation or so have a lot of like fondness and attachment to the '90s. You see that coming out in comics now, like a lot of sort of '90s influence stuff. Whereas I kind of never really had that much fondness for it because I never had those comics.
Right.
I was reading comics already like 20 years out of date. Um, so if you were so inclined, you could probably trace some of that influence to a much earlier sort of generation of comic books, with for good or for ill.
I mean, I think it's really it's all relative, right? I mean, I there's great work that was put out in the '70s. There's great work
Oh
that
yeah,
was put out in the '90s.
oh for
Um,
sure.
we all just have our different like lineages as far as any arts go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not like bagging on one time period or another.
Oh no.
It's just kind of funny to see where because I mean everyone's work is heavily influenced by what they came up with, and it's interesting to see how that manifests in different people.
So you taught junior high.
Mhm.
How did you do that? That is an intense age to teach. Very much so.
Well, it was that or working at the grocery store, so it certainly was a lot better than that. But no, that's I went. I mean, I went to school to be a teacher. I've got my BED, and I'd originally trained to do like high school, secondary school, and eventually I was teaching high school at the school I was at. Next year's contracts came around. They said, "Well, we need someone in for grade 7, 8, 9," and I was like, "Yeah, sure, I can do that." And that's where it came from. So it was an interesting challenge. It's a lot of different challenges than you would get in high school, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
I only did substitute teaching for high school, and so that was. I mean, I was a good sub. I was the sub they liked. It was intense.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, like teaching's no joke. It's I joke that the amount of comics I'm writing now, it's still less stressful than being a teacher.
It's really actually just appalling how poorly teachers are compensated for the amount of work they do.
No, I mean, I make more money writing comic books than I was teaching.
And
Uh,
I mean, that's got to be a really like incredible thing. Because around what time did you make the full shift from your previous job to writing full time?
I was in November of 2019.
Okay, so this was like pretty recent, and that's got to be so surreal to sort of like land that dream at a
Yeah,
time when.
it was pretty strange.
And so when did you? Okay, so I know that you said that you had gotten involved um, with I think it was if it was a Marvel, it was either Boom or Marvel, but you had a friend who was a talented artist who
Mhm.
brought you on as the writer, and you said yourself that you were not as talented as he was as far as art goes in comparison, which I mean that's debatable, I think.
I mean, I mean, I don't know at that time. Like Sheldon, especially at that point in time, was a much better artist than I was a writer. But I mean, it's I'm not particularly bothered by it. It's just kind of the state of affairs.
Do you think that he saw something in you that you were not able to see in yourself?
I mean, maybe like we've been friends for a long time at that point. We were making comics together way before he was doing Marvel stuff,
And so
and a large
I'm
part of
sorry.
it was he just didn't know any of the Marvel characters. So he's like, "Yeah, I want to do this job, but I need to pick an X-Men character and a not X-Men character, have them team up." He's like, I don't know what to do." I'm like, "Oh shit, I'll do it."
What was your first Marvel comic that you did? What was the very first one you worked on?
Well, that was it. That was X-Men Serve and Protect #4, which came out in I think February of 2010. So,
Hmm.
oh no, I guess it'd be 2011. I got the job in 2010, but I don't think it came out until 2011.
And then
So,
from then on, you've gone and you've had, I mean, a very illustrious career with Marvel. You've done a lot of different properties with them, and I guess now the question that I know that you've been asked before is how did
mhm,
you get invited to do Magic the Gathering? And you had said that there was a call from Boom Studios
yep.
that said that they just wanted to invite you. Now, I'm interested in to know. So, okay, you get the call and you say yes, obviously, because it's Magic,
Mhm.
and then what is the next step? Do you go to a meeting? Who do you meet with? How do you decide what the steps are going to be in stepping forward with a project like
So basically, this was probably around this time last year. I don't remember exactly when I got the email from Amanda. Let me take a quick look here. But like, it's just probably a little over a year ago now that this whole process started. It was almost a year to the day. It was
Wow.
this. I think the let's see. Yeah. Okay. No, not quite. So yeah, it was May 8th of 2020. They got a hold of me. Um, they got the license from Magic. It wasn't out there yet. I don't think as far as publicity went, but they're looking to put a book together, and they wanted to kind of shoot big. They really wanted to do a big story to start it off, and ideally something a book that could focus as like a mothership for. We do spin-offs. We could have one shots. We could have tie-ins, that kind of thing. So Amanda emailed me. She said, I'd read some of your stories. So I had a bunch of stories on my writing blog from when I was writing short stories to keep up on practice.
The WordPress site?
Yes, yes. So she said, I read the story on your blog, and I think it would be a great fit for a magic book, and that's the best way to get a writer on your side to say, I read the thing you wrote that no one else liked, but I like it.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, then we just kind of went back and forth. We were trying to figure out what we could do that would set us up for success, that would give us a lot of opportunities to work around stuff, stuff that would appeal to longtime fans, as well as, comic fans who are not necessarily Magic fans, as well as people who are just new to the whole thing and thought the cover looked cool. So there was a lot of back and forth. It took a while because, I would have to come up with something. I run it by Boom, then Boom has to run it by Wizards. And Wizards tells Boom what's wrong with it, and Boom tells me what's wrong with it. And we kind of go back through
Okay.
the
Okay.
washing machine a few times. Um, at the same time, I had to refamiliarize myself with Magic as it stood in the year 2020. I was very into Magic when I was younger, through the 90s. But I think the last time I'd bought any cards would have been like 2000, 2001.
You things have
So,
changed a little since then in Magic. Yeah.
well, that's the thing. I was like, I'm like, I come from superhero comics. Like, I know how to do my research. Things can't have changed that much. It turns out
Mm.
everything had changed to a staggering degree.
Was
Uh,
that
so,
was that a that was a kick to the chest? I bet you're like, whoa. There's literally different worlds, like beyond worlds, beyond worlds, beyond worlds.
oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, the whole because we're talking to like, yeah, we're going to bring some planeswalkers into it. And like, in the 90s, a planeswalker was the next best thing to God. Whereas now it's significantly different. They're more of the superhero kind of power set than your Urzas or your Freyalises of the 90s. So I kind of had to give myself a crash course on that. I was in a lot of communication with a buddy of mine from high school who had never gotten out of the game. So I would come up with stuff and I'd be like, hey, what do you think of this? Does it sound like a good idea? Does this work as far as the established world goes? And he'd be like, yeah, that works. No, that's already been done. No, this breaks the rules in a way that you can't really do in these stories. And that was a big help. Well, I got myself up to speed.
Oh, so you had a consultant, sort of, basically.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's one of my oldest friends became my story consultant. So
That's
it was an enormous.
that's fortuitous.
Yeah, no, he was a huge help, and it was it's in my we're in our late 30s going on now, and it's nice to have an excuse to talk to your old friends.
Yeah, right. It's I'm with you on that one because everybody's lives are so busy. It's almost you have to have sort of a reason to do it. Otherwise, things get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and that reason is usually, hey, can you help me do my job so I can make some money, please?
That's a useful
Uh,
thing to do.
but yeah, so after a few rounds of that, we got to the point where we were ready to get going. We would have, I would have calls with Boom fairly frequently where we start to kind of hash things out. We figure out what the general idea is, what the first 5 issues are going to look like, and once they started getting the scripts in, they go to Boom, they come back with notes, and they go to Wizards, they come back with notes, and then eventually, every once in a while, I'd have a Zoom meeting with Boom and Wizards and myself. We kind of like hash things out, say what directions work, what kind of directions they'd like us to go in, things that they think are not really working in this book for what they want from an adaptation of their property, and yeah, just kind of hash it out from there. And we've been in business ever since.
And when you do that Zoom meeting, is there how many people are in there combined between both Boom and Wizards and yourself? Like how many people are in that, and is it sort of like a committee that decides, or is there a person who say is the liaison?
Well, generally, we'd have two people from Wizards who are sort of like assigned to develop this kind of thing and handle it. Then we have three person editorial team from Boom would be there, and then myself with my notes, my whatnots. So generally, Boom and I are on the same page when we get into a meeting like that because we want to be ready. So there's just less messing around, so we can get stuff done as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Um, and it's good. Like the guys from Wizards are always great to talk to. They're excited about it, um, and they want it to be good, and they want it to be a successful extension of their property. So yeah, no, they've been great to work with.
And were there any instances, as far as creative back and forth, were there any instances where maybe they suggested something and you had something else in mind, and in the end your idea went through, or vice versa?
Um, to a certain extent, like there's notes on characterization, notes on action. Sometimes I'll get that, well, you want to push back on because think, okay, maybe this doesn't work for you if you're reading this in the script, but as I've read comic books for a living, comic books are my thing. I can guarantee you this beat works. Like not every time,
Right, I
obviously,
got you.
but there are times when you're like, this is my job. This is something I'm, maybe not an expert at, but certainly a professional. And there's some things, I'd like to keep. I'd like to make sure this stays this way. Other stuff, other stuff is very valid. But they say this doesn't work. This doesn't work because of this. I'm like, you know what? That's a good point. You're right. Um, Time to go back and take another shot at it. Early on, my first impulses were to basically make the entire thing a callback to '90s magic. That got slapped down pretty quickly because,
Yeah,
as it turns out, not everybody has the exact same experience with the property as I do.
yeah,
So
that's could be like, can we just why don't we just ignore the 20 years of stuff and
yeah,
just go with what I know.
and it's like kids love legends, right? Kids love homelands. It's like, well, it'll be the Chandler and Joven show. People love it.
Right? Like kids do love it, except the kids are in their 30s now and they have kids. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, when I came back to it, and I was like, Nico Bolas was a huge character. Like that dumb looking lizard who's in like an armchair reading a book. Thinking back to his original card, and then looking up, I'm like, oh
right.
shit, they actually did a bunch of stuff with that guy.
Yeah, he got a little work done, I think.
Yeah, he had a real glow up.
So basically, what I find interesting, the way you described Ravnica, because that's where the primary story is set, and all of the people, or all the planeswalkers are based in Ravnica. You call it the NYC of the multiverse, right?
Yes, but with a proviso that I'm coming from Marvel, and that's New York is the center of the Marvel universe, right?
Right, right.
So that's
Well, I
kind of
mean,
the same idea. One of the directions Wizards is interested in exploring is that there's a lot of similarities between superhero comics and the planeswalkers as they now exist in
absolutely.
Magic, and they wanted to kind of explore what successful things we could take from that, while avoiding stuff that would bog it down and take it out of this the fantasy setting that they've established. So yeah, like in many respects, Ravnica is kind of the center of the Magic story, or has been at least recently. It's home of the
Yeah,
Gatewatch. It's where War of the Spark happened. The whole they're obviously branching pretty far out from Ravnica these days with the last year of sets, but up until the point where we started making the book, it was very much kind of like the linchpin of the Magic story.
I think it still is. I mean, there's gonna be the return to Ravnica. There has, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Ravnica is always coming back.
Yeah, you can't get rid of Ravnica, and but I'm an Innistrad boy myself, but I love me some Ravnica. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, so Zig, I was doing an issue. We are working on an issue where I was writing and trying to figure out they're going from plane to plane to plane. I'm like, well, is there any plane you particularly want to draw? And he's like, oh man, you gotta get Innistrad in there. I'm like, all right, Innistrad, page one.
Really, that's amazing. So you get a chance to to get with the artist and sort of collaborate and say, "Hey, I'm interested in getting your feedback," and they can sort of help you shape where you're going with the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Like because like I'm gonna be honest, I think it's got to be a real tough job to draw this book. There's a lot of stuff in it. It's not a lot of corners being cut as far as depicting huge fantastic characters and environments.
Right,
Um, and again, like this isn't doing like an indie fantasy book because this is a licensed book. Stuff has to look like it's supposed to look. So you got to make sure you're on model. So I mean, this has got to be an extremely difficult book to draw.
right.
So any time I can give Ig something that he would really like to draw, I really do it because the guy needs a break.
I always pitied comic book artists because it seems like especially Marvel, for instance, like everything's happening in New York City. and I always looked at the background artwork of the city itself, and I thought that's got to be a bitch to draw. Like the city, I mean, the actual characters themselves probably seem almost a relief to do outside of like the landscape in the background of the city.
Yeah, I mean, you're only going to see so many swinging across the city scenes per issue of Spider-Man or your Daredevils, or in my case, your Black Cats or your Moon Knights.
Right. Yeah. I guess the less they fly, the easier it is.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have some in there, but you can't spend the whole issue doing that, or it's not Akira.
Right. Um. So as what I'm curious about is like with all of
Mhm.
the properties that you're working on, and it's like I like Iron Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Cat. These are all in one way, shape, or another being discussed or have already been brought to the big screen and or a television series.
Mhm.
Um, what with I mean without and if there's I don't know if there's a way for you to talk about this without disclosing anything that's NDA, but is there going to be a cross sectioning between what's being done here and what's being done with the upcoming Netflix special? And I mean, how do you navigate those waters as a writer when you have something coming out that maybe possibly is next to it as far as two releases go?
Oh, I simply don't. Nobody tells me anything,
Okay,
so it's pretty easy. I just
right.
do my thing, and then they do their thing, and then sometimes they happen at the same time. Like, yeah, no, nobody's telling me anything about any TV developments or movie deals, or what's happening in the next films.
So
They're
any synchronicity is a happenstance.
yeah, I would imagine. Like, I mean, I'm writing Moon Knight starting next month, and then we get the Moon Knight TV show. And people are like, "Oh, is there going to be stuff from the TV show in your series?" I'm like, "I don't know. It might be by mistake,
My
but
mistake.
like, I don't know what's happening in this show outside the fact it's called Moon Knight and Oscar Isaac's in it." Similarly, like, "Oh, are they going to be taking from your books to put in the show?" I'm like, "I doubt it. The book's not out yet, and I think they've already started filming." So uh, it's nice that they're both going to be out at roughly the same time, I think. But beyond that, I don't think there's a lot of cross pollination. Like, you may see movies and books, or movies and TV shows taking from comics, but that's where they're drawing their inspiration from. Whereas, unless there's some sort of push where they say we want to have these characters on the same team because that's the same team that's in the movie, it's easier to sell a book. Or my Taskmaster book that I did this year, it had to be a Taskmaster and Black Widow book because obviously Taskmaster and Black Widow are in the film. Does it have anything to do with the movie? No, but do they want to have a book with these two characters in it when this movie comes out? Absolutely.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, so they can cross promote with the images and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's really cool about the things that you're doing is like, well, that I'm curious about is how do you juggle, say, like writing all of these different properties, which I mean, it's got to be, I know you probably love what you do, but it's got to be a stressful thing to do just to handle all
Yeah,
those.
it can be. Like, usually by the time that I'm ready to sit down and write the script, I know generally what I'm doing. But it's the idea prior to that where I'm doing the outlines and saying, here's what happens in issue 6, here's what happens in issue 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. That's kind of the tough one because you got to have an idea for every issue. You got to have something that will carry each issue on its own while still being in service to the larger plot. Like, I'm writing Magic Number 8 right now. It's dealing with big fallout from Magic Number 7, which is itself dealing with big fallout from Magic Number 6, which is itself dealing. You got to have that moment that each issue is going to end on, where the reader's going to say, "Shit, I got to see what happens next."
Yeah, and I've been having those too for sure. Oh yeah, definitely.
And
Cliffhanger.com.
you haven't seen anything yet. Like, you just read 1 and 2. It's we're basically escalating every issue. Uh, by the end of issue 5, we're gonna have like I think it's gonna be a pretty huge reveal. So
That's so
mark
exciting.
your calendars for August.
Well, I mean, it chaps my ass that it's like the actual release of the new one comes out like 2 days from now, and I'm like, I'm so frustrated that I can't like discuss the that I like I'm like 2 days away from being
Yeah.
brought up. And I will say this. I read them. I got them on a whim, and I was like, okay, wow, this is good. It's good stuff. Like I tore through it, and I got that sensation that you get when you are either watching a TV show or reading a serial, and you're like, you've been reading it, and you're super engrossed, and then you pull back for a second. You're like, I'm enjoying this way too much. It's gonna be over in a second. Oh, it's
Yeah.
gonna be over in a second, and then it
Uh,
is.
the, yeah. Like, oh, there's that inside back cover ad.
Yep, yep. And so I'm reading mine digitally, so I don't even get to see. Like
Mm.
I'm just scrolling down, and I'm like, and then it's over, and I'm like, no, no.
30 days. 30 days.
I know that's a lot. That's an entire rehab stint. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Exactly.
but
Yeah. It's. I mean, that's the game. That's the game. That's the trick. You try to you gotta leave people wanting more, but you also have to give them enough that the time reads are full until that next month rolls around. Otherwise, no one's going to bother.
mm-hmm. Right, and the reviews have been very good. I've looked it up, and I mean, not just myself, but it looks like the community as a whole is behind it. How do you feel about how it's been received?
I don't really know how it's been received.
Oh, it's really.
I haven't looked it up. I think I wasn't sure what sort of response I get from the comics people, what sort of response you get from the game people, and then where that crossover happens. And so I just generally kind of stayed away from it because I think if it was very poorly received, I think that would kind of throw a bit of a hitch in my step. So
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, I'll just silo myself away from this and just keep working, and hopefully people are liking it. Like, as far as I know, the sales are doing well. Issue one sold like Boffo. Issue two went to second printing before it even hit the stands. So as far as I know, it's still selling well. So and as far as I know, Boom is happy and Wizards are happy. So I'm just kind of went on hoping that the readers were happy.
Well, I can tell you by actual like for proof. Yeah, they are.
Oh, good. Well, it's good to hear.
Yeah, like you got nothing to worry about. I mean, and I wouldn't have. I mean, I wouldn't have brought it up if like it was like, oh, how do you feel about the terrible reviews you just got? Like that would be
They're
like,
like, my feelings are quite badly hurt.
they're like, I feel shitty. Thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that up.
Yeah. How do
Um,
you think?
so as far as like I think it is really cool the way that you are taking it, and it's fantastic that you are bringing magic into sort of this like superhero esque style
Hmm.
kind of like themes. Um, but my question about so when you because since you got most of your writing styles from just absorbing other people's properties as you've grown up, do you have time to even read now with the amount of work that you're doing?
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, like, my writing style didn't just come from comic books. It's a great deal of it is from prose. A great deal of it's from watching TV or watching movies, or something like that. So I certainly have less time to consume media than I used to, given that my hobby, which is writing, has now become my actual job.
Right.
But I always have to make time for reading comics because I always have to do my research. I gotta know where last time this character turned up, or when this character died, or what this character's up to. So I'm always doing my digital digging and trying to find stuff to read so I can stay current. And but also, I think it's important to make time to read. If you're going to be a writer, the best thing you can do is read. You're
Hmm.
learning new tricks. You're basically consuming that raw material that your brain will churn up and then progress to turn it into something new. So it's not always easy, but I think it is necessary to. And I mean, I'm not saying you have to, break your skull open and read extremely difficult stuff all the time. You can just chill out and read, a dumb novel or some silly comics or something.
Oh
But
yeah, I love me some Valley of the Dolls every once
yeah, so if anything suffered, it's the fact that I basically watch zero television anymore, or very few movies. But I mean, whatever. Who cares?
yeah, I mean, that's tough. I mean, I love movies, but I'm also not writing like 18 different comics for like. I mean, you've gone from the audience to the creator. It's almost like it's a fair trade off. what would be one comic that you have that you like that you wish you could have worked on that maybe is done that you would just like given your pinky to work on?
I've always got different answers for this because it's always whatever kind of tickles my fancy at the time. Like my
What's
default
tickling you
answer is
now?
my default answer is always Alpha Flight. Like I love Alpha Flight. I'm a Canadian. They're the one Canadian superhero team, and I was just always charmed about like what a gang of screw ups they were. They never had any money. The government was always screwing them over. Their leader kept dying.
Right.
Uh, yeah, there's just, but also true to form, they can't sell a book to save their lives. Like there was an Alpha Flight one shot a couple of years ago that I got on. It's me and Ed Brisson and Jim Zub, and it was great. I got my chance to do an Alpha Flight story, and I guess it sold quite well in Canada, but apparently not elsewhere.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I'd never heard of it before, but there's that's the thing. But Canadian, like for instance, I sound like such an ignad, but you were featured in a short story compilation of dystopian stories.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
I forget the name was dystopian.
Dystopia from the Rock.
Yes, and I'm thinking to myself, they have dystopia in Canada. You just seem so happy. I just didn't think that there was upset feelings going on over there because everybody is so polite uh, from
Well,
Canada.
we've got our own grimness, as recent news events have shown.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, like Dystopia from the Rock, like doesn't matter where you're from, you can still write stories about whatever. Like I write largely about American superheroes based in New York, and then magical superheroes based in magical New York. So not a lot of that is part of my, my lived experience. So you have to do a lot of extrapolation.
What would you say the like more who would be some of the most influential Canadian authors that you could think of as far as representing culture as a whole?
Oh man, representative Canadian authors. Well, I mean, we've got one of, I think, the greatest living fantasists, Guy Gabriel Kay. He's a great Canadian writer. Robertson Davies was a huge man of letters from way back. I loved his work. The whole trilogy, like Rebel Angels and Bread and the Bone and Lyre of Orpheus, stuff like that's all right. I mean, like there's a ton of Canadian writers and Canadian musicians, Canadian
Oh
artists.
yeah.
A lot of them is just that a lot of times when people get successful enough, they just stop living in Canada.
Right, right.
I mean, you guys have got Drake back. You guys took Drake. You know what's up.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We take everybody, down to either in Florida or LA or which where I'm in
Yeah,
Florida right now. So, but you guys got Celine Dion, right? I think she owns a house in every country. I think
yeah.
all
I
over the
don't.
world.
I think Celine Dion's a citizen of the world at this point.
Yeah, she owns several islands. I'm sure that's good for her. Good for her. She can sing.
Yeah, rich people stuff.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, net worth. So I won't be keeping you for too much longer, but what would be a either if you could name a comic book or a graphic novel that you think everyone should read before they die?
Oof. Hey, you kind of put me on the spot here.
That's right.
It's
It's what I love to do.
man. Let me see. That's my favorite stuff. Yeah, these are always ones I have trouble with because I never think of like my list of favorites. So and whenever someone's like, "What's your favorite?" This I tend to give each person a different answer every time.
That's okay. I mean,
Um,
this happens with other people I've talked to. They need a little time to metacognate while the question sort of sits and stirs. So if you need a minute, that's cool because I can edit and I can
yeah, no,
edit
that's
everything.
true. I mean, off the top of my head, I think one of my longtime favorite comics has been Paul Poe's 100%. It was it was a book I picked up. I think it was probably what 19, 20, 21, something like that. It was around the end of the time I was in university, and it was like nothing else I'd ever seen at that point in time. That was I was very involved in the artist message boards. A lot of up and coming artists were getting out there and putting their stuff out. And Paul Pope was always the guy they talked about. And I was like, okay, well, I'll see what this is all about. And I picked up I think issue two because they didn't have issue one. I picked up issue two and I was like, wow, this is just really something else. Like the artwork was totally unlike anything else I could see on the comic racks at the comic store. The story was just uh, you know it's I picked it up. I'm like, well, this isn't an action based story. People aren't fighting all the time, and that's usually what I would read in one form or another. So eventually, I got all the issues together and read it front to back, and then got the trade paperback so that have something easy to put on the shelves. But it's something that's always stood out to me every time I read it. I'm like, man, it's really enjoyable. It's a really wonderful thing to look at, um, and it was a change. It made a change that one of my favorite books, was a romance comic book.
Just out of curiosity, what was the name of that short story that the person from what was it? Was it Allison from Zoom, or the one who
Oh,
discovered you?
Amanda,
I'm sorry, Amanda. What was the name of the story that she read that is yours?
I think it was called the Fedim, Feddim. It's on my WordPress there.
I'm
It's
gonna
just
check
like
it out.
it's just like a fantasy, like a kind of my attempt at doing a weird fantasy story to varying degrees of success. But
Cool.
I liked it, and uh, it seemed to set the tone of what they wanted for a magic book. So
I mean, it's a varying degree of success. I would say that would be a success. I mean,
that's true.
you got
It got me a
big.
job.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a good sign. And my final question would be actually for I'm curious, as a writer, as since you do, long form, what is your main like style, as far as would you describe yourself as genre wise, as when you write long form? And is there anything that you're working on right now? Obviously you got your schedule packed, but is there anything you're working on right now that you would like to discuss before I let you go?
So by long form, do you mean like prose, or you mean just like
Yeah,
long running comic books?
like prose. Yeah, I'd say prose. I
Okay.
mean, yeah.
I mean, generally my prose is adventurous in some respect. I like writing adventure stories, whether they're sword and sorcery, whether they're crime, whether they're fantasy or science fiction. Um, there's generally sort of like a reckless, ambitious bent to it, or not ambitious, excuse me, adventurous bent to it, because it's just what I like. I always told myself there's nothing wrong with writing pulp,
No way.
and that's kind of a lot. That's kind of a lot of what I did. So I think that would probably best describe the kind of stories. Because I was writing for fun. For my writing group, we used to do a story every month. So I'd write something that is exciting and have momentum, energy, because it's easier to write. Right, you're always just
Yeah.
kind of pushing things along.
I mean, there's a certain type of person who poo-poos on pulp, and it's
Sure.
usually an unsuccessful writer, I've noticed.
Yeah. As far as things coming up, I don't have a lot of. I mean, my prose has basically suffered. I've written almost zero prose since. I think it's been 2, 3 years since I put a story on my website. But I have been very busy with comic books. Magic number 3 is coming out. What, day
Two
after tomorrow?
days. Day
2
after
days.
tomorrow. Yeah, June 9th.
Yeah. So that's coming out. Like I said, I'm writing number 8 right now. We're flying through it. I've got Black Cat still going. Got Black Cat Annual this month, and then Black Cat number 8 starting a whole new story next month. Next month Moon Knight starts, so that's gonna be really exciting as a big get for me. And Avengers Next Strike is still coming out. We got issues 4 and 5 in here out this month and next month. And lastly, my new project was just announced today: the death of Doctor Strange.
Oh,
So
snap.
yeah, we're killing Doctor Strange in September.
Oh, oh my God, is that legal? Can you do that?
Whether it is or isn't, it's happening.
Wow. That's intense, man. Those things are always like those got to be rough to write. Those got to be rough to write.
It's 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 very interesting. I'll tell you that, because most of the time you're trying to tell stories that keep the character alive, whereas this is quite the opposite.
Right. Oh,
So
is it a bummer, sort of, knowing that you're like, it's like, do you feel like almost like a little bit of like a cosmic murderer? You're like, oh God, I'm the one who's
I mean, you do a bit, but also the trick is you're like, well, this is happening, and I want to make people feel a certain way about it. And that's the challenge. That's the trick. Where
Hmm.
like, because I mean, it's called the Death of Doctor Strange. No one's gonna be surprised that he dies here.
No.
But it's how you get to that, and then what happens after, and that's the real meat of it.
Well, I'd look forward to that. I mean, it's I'm pretty comic ignorant, but I after looking at your stuff, I'm like, this is something that I can get into. I can dig it. Um, but congratulations on all of your success, and thank
Oh,
you so
thank
much
you.
for taking the time to talk to me today.
No, not at all. Happy to. And again, I'm sorry for showing up so late there.
Oh, don't even worry about it. You know what? You didn't even have to say anything because they wouldn't have known, but now they know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But you got to be real with the people. You got to be real with your audience.
Yeah, well, yes, and I am as real as they get. I mean, look at my eyes.
There you have it. All right, cool. Well, it's been great chatting with you.
All right, thanks. Good one.
All right, you too.
Such good tidbits from Jed. Who else is raring up for that Innistrad visit? Between that and the upcoming Crimson Vow Midnight Hunt sets coming later this year, I'm about to blow a gasket. Again? I really need to stop bringing my phone to shoots. Let me just see who this is. Wow. Well, it looks like I will be finding an outlet for that gasket blow. For now. But for real, people, check out the comic and stay tuned for upcoming reviews. So until next time, I gotta scoot. Do you have any mouthwash?
Why? Who texted you?
Oh, yeah, right. Like I'm gonna embarrass myself by telling you anything. Nice try, but I am wise to your ways, cameraman. I am no longer the butt of anyone's jokes. But seriously, do you have any mouthwash?